Mess you up.
That's for a living. All right, we're recording.
Can you do something like this? We go live in 5. Wait, that's you.
Yeah.
Oh, George does that.
4, 3.
Yeah, I would have had trouble remembering not to vocalize the last two numbers.
It was tricky.
You probably got called out on
Yeah,
that.
that would have been a real challenge for me.
In fact, one night we didn't go on the air on time.
Mm-hmm.
Another night we didn't play the xylophone. We started with a
Oh,
music.
if you would have had me.
We all had our moments. Trust me.
All right, Dad, tell us a little about what you remember about growing up in Maysville. Just say, hello, I'm John Collins. I was born in such and such time in such and such a place.
Okay, start out with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you want me to sing it or just?
If you want to sit down.
Oh no, I'm fine.
You don't have to look at the camera. You can look at us.
No, okay.
Look at Suzanne because
I'm
she's
not.
a riveting
I'm
audience.
trying to wipe that out of my
Yeah,
feeble
there you
brain.
go.
Susie the Riveter.
Is it rolling now?
Yeah,
Oh.
the door is open with a window open. If anybody gets hot or cold, let me know and we'll
Okay.
adjust it accordingly.
And so what's the date?
Good morning.
December.
Good morning.
December
27th.
27th. Is it one day from Jane's birthday?
Yes.
December 26th.
And 2 days from Joe's. Yeah.
2014.
Okay, Dad.
Today
say today's
is
date.
today is December the 27th, 2014. 2 days after Joe's birthday, and 1 day before yours, 1 or 2 days. My arithmetic is not very good. Anyway, I'm John A. Collins. A stands for Anthony. I don't know where the Anthony came from. My father's name was John. His middle name was Thomas. John Thomas.
Really?
I'm not exactly sure where we want to start, so you'll have to prompt me with questions or suggestions.
Well, just tell me why were you born in Maysville?
Why was I
how'd
born
your
in
family end up
Maysville?
there?
My father was born in Iowa. Postville, as I recall, was the apparently small town because I haven't been able to find it on a map. In the meantime, he and his 3 sisters and his father lived in Iowa. To the best of my knowledge, I was never there, so I don't know what the circumstances were. I think my grandfather Collins was probably a farmer, but and I presume he came from Ireland, but I don't know any of the circumstances. We weren't able to locate any genealogy information. We probably waited too long to get started looking it up as far as the Collins side of the family. But at some point they moved from Iowa to, I believe, probably Cincinnati, and lived there for probably a short time, and then eventually moved to Maysville. My mother's my mother's father was named Brown, Robert Brown, and he was an operator of a dray, which, as I understand it, in those days was a transport company. He instead of trucks, he had several wagons that were horse driven, and he had 4 children. The youngest of whom was my mother, Margaret Brown. Margaret had 1 sister sibling, and the rocking chair in the other room with the lion's head belonged to Aunt Mally, my mother's only sister. My mother had 2 brothers. the older of the two brothers was Jim Brown, and he was a blacksmith. And as the story that I got is that he met with relatively early death as an adult, and one of the reasons was because in the the blacksmithing business, you work a lot around heat, and how they knew this, I don't know, or how valid true it is. He absorbed so much of the heat around the forge in the blacksmith shop that it affected his lungs, and at some point he passed away, of course, earlier than to be expected. And by the way, Jim had two children, one of which was Miles Brown, and you all would maybe with the exception of Suzanne, I don't know if you ever met Miles, but he was a subject of many interesting comments, and he was a jeweler. They called them jewelers. He really worked in a jewelry store, and that one of the stories we all got a kick out of, deviating somewhat from the Collins side, was that Miles worked as a clerk in a jewelry store, and one of his jobs was to keep the display cases clean and polished. And he was if you had known Miles, you would understand how he was the type of personality that would do a great job in polishing the display cases. He prided himself on keeping things neat and clean and polished up, and he told the story about the fact that it wasn't unusual for him to have finished polishing the display cases, that it was part of his responsibility, but that the two little girls whose grandfather had a competitive watch repair and jewelry store down the block would come in Miles's store to visit with him, and presumably these two little girls were grade school or younger, and they would go around and look at the things in the display case in Miles' store, and they would point to the items in the store, and as a result get their fingerprints on Miles's newly polished display cases. And this was Rosemary Clooney and her sister Betty. And Miles, that was an interesting little sidelight that Miles used to talk. But you would have to know Miles to appreciate that story and to hear him tell it, because he had his own way of talking, and personality-wise, you could almost visualize him doing that sort of thing. Miles's father was named Andy Clooney, and I think at one time he was mayor of Maysville, besides the fact that he did have a watch repair shop and a jewelry shop down the blocks.
And Dad, you said Miles' father.
That's not
You mean
Miles.
Rosemary's father?
No, this is Miles's, not
No.
Miles's father. I'm sorry. That would be Rosemary's grandfather.
Oh.
Grandfather.
Okay.
Grandfather was, he's the one that had the competitive
Yes.
jeweler?
Yes.
Watch,
And had
not
been
her father, her
had
grandfather.
no, not her father,
Right.
and had been as I recall, had been mayor of Maysville maybe for a stint someplace back in our history. Rosemary's father and mother, didn't have any. Of course, they were older generation, so I didn't have much information related to them. But I don't know what Rosemary's father did, but Rosemary's mother had a sister, and the sister, the story goes, was was greatly responsible for Rosemary getting into singing because she was a vocalist. This lady would be Rosemary's aunt, and she was responsible because she was involved in vocal music, and she taught. I don't know any of the details. Rosemary and her sister Betty to sing, and when they were little girls, they kind of had a reputation around Maysville of being singers, and I think they got that from their aunt. I can't remember her first name. Interesting name, but anyway.
Dad, before you, now you were talking about Miles is the son
Yeah.
of Jim Brown.
Miles is the
One-
yes,
But
who
then-
was
but
the
it-
blacksmith.